Well, we find ourselves in Golden, Colorado again.
Oh boy.
Last time we were through there, we stopped at the Colorado Railroad Museum because it's always fun to stop at the Colorado Railroad. You know, we've been there before on the show, but we actually spent so much time in the Roundhouse last time we were there, we saw nothing else.
That's it, yes.
We thought we'd come back and get caught up on a few things. So check it out, the Colorado Railroad Museum in Golden. It seems like every time we come to the Colorado Railroad Museum, there's some big event going on.
Yeah.
And so we miss the whole museum because we
Right.
get, riding a train or looking at something. And we said, let's just go on a day when there's not a darn thing going on. And there wasn't a darn thing going
We'll
on.
just show up.
We had the whole place to ourselves. And the upside of that is we had the whole place to ourselves. For the first time, we got to see absolutely everything. Of course, the downside of that is all the little things like the Garden Railroad and so on weren't running because there was nobody here.
Yeah.
Anyway, it did give us a chance to get right down nose to nose with all of the little exhibits. Look at this. Do you recognize the model on the left there?
I sure do.
That's the Delton Mason Bogie. We did a collector's attic on that. And look at this.
Oh, look at that.
Large articulated engines from World War II. In this case, a Challenger. Rio Grande ended up with a few Challengers. Down here is our old friend 844.
Oh, neat.
Wow. All of these live steam in 1/8 scale. Just huge. And speaking of huge, a big boy.
Oh,
They don't get bigger than that.
that's the only way to photograph that, too.
Yeah. Now this is really interesting. This was originally Rio Grande Southern number 74, been repainted as number 30. It's a Brooks consolidation with this really unusual valve gear. I really like this engine. I'd like to know a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so would I.
It's in reasonably good shape. I guess it belongs to the city of Boulder.
Oh.
And it was in their park, and they have loaned it to the museum, so it's on display here now. You know, Bachmann made a very similar locomotive to this.
Really?
In 120.3 scale, and oddly enough, of course, we have one. This newer building here is the Richardson Library, named for Robert Richardson, who built this museum.
Oh, wow, that's neat.
Isn't that cool? This is his replica of the Mancos Depot, which he built in South Alamosa, so he calls it South Alamosa Depot. But that's where Richardson originally built this museum, was at Alamosa, and then subsequently he moved it here to Golden.
An office, a little museum, and upstairs living quarters.
Originally, he operated it as a motel. That's how he made his money anyway. He had motel rooms here at the museum, and people could come and watch the trains and ride the trains, and then he made money by selling them rooms at the motel. But a lot of this equipment is the equipment that he collected for his narrow gauge motel, he called it. Later on, it became the Colorado Railroad Museum, and they continued to expand his collection.
Oh, look at all the geese.
Isn't that fun? We went on that great goose ride.
Oh, I love these things.
They take these down to Cumbers and Toltec periodically, and we went down for one of those.
Yes, we
That was-
rode on Goose 5.
Yeah, and Goose 7 here.
Yeah.
That was one of the funnest trips we've ever been on.
No kidding. Oh, talk about a rat rod.
Aren't they cool? Infamously, this is how Rio Grande Southern stayed in business through the Great Depression. They couldn't run steam engines anymore, but they could run these.
Yes, just like the rat rod.
Yeah, exactly. Cobbled together out of junk.
Back here, scramble to finish it.
So, of course, we had to wander over to the Roundhouse.
Yes.
Now, normally you'd get kicked out of that
Right.
situation, but we know Jeff Taylor over here, so we just name drop, and
Yes.
that usually gets us the chef's tour of the kitchen since he's the chef.
Yes.
And they're doing a lot of restoration work over here. This is their pride and joy, engine 346. It's the engine that Richardson bought. He had two running locomotives back with the motel, 346, and Rio Grande Southern number 20. Subsequently, they had to sort of give up on 20, or it gave up on them. But right now, they're completely restoring number 20 and hope to have it back on the rails here in maybe a year. So here's one of their restoration projects, Uinta 50, passenger car 50.
Wow.
And they just started on that last year when we were here. And it was coming together.
It was.
But they had a lot of work to do. And this year, look what Jeff has done.
Look at the interior wood finishing that they've been doing.
Nice. And the wooden window frames, which has allowed them to put the glass in.
Right.
But there was no salvageable wood anywhere in this. So they've had to recreate all of the wood. And then a lot of this just beautiful wood gets painted.
Oh, I know. It's like, what?
This won't be painted.
No.
Look at that burl inlay. Oh,
It's beautiful.
all hand carved on these seat frames. These guys are just really doing a beautiful job on this car. Still have a lot to get done,
They do.
but it's really looking cool. And well, Uinta is one of our favorite railroads. so
Right.
that's really fun. Jeff was showing this off. It looks like an old Edison light bulb, but on close inspection, it's an LED.
Yes.
So, uses no power, doesn't run hot or anything, and will last forever. So that's just really cool. Here we have the tender for number 20, Rio Grande 20. The locomotive frame and boiler are off in Pennsylvania being rebuilt.
Why in the world is that tender painted white?
I asked Jeff that, and he said it was somebody's idea of a good idea, and it didn't turn. Since the lettering here is white, they thought it would be easier to paint the thing white and then do the black over the top of that to create the lettering. The best laid plans, I
Yes,
guess.
I guess so.
Anyway, what a beautiful engine. Look at this. This is how it got dressed for a movie.
Oh my.
This is the Emma Sweeney.
Gee.
From Ticket to Tomahawk, it's Rio Grande Southern number 20. I think this is where Ward Kimball got the idea for the Emma Nevada, the Emma Sweeney. But they really dressed number 20 up for the movie. It's just beautiful. And they recreated it entirely out of wood because the script called for the engine to be dismantled and carted around on a wagon. And they couldn't do that with the real engine, so... and that wood replica's in Durango.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Here's the new cab.
Look at that.
And all this gets painted.
I was just going to say, they're not going to paint
They're
that,
going
are
to paint that. All this gets painted. Look at that beautiful oak. And they've, people said, no, you just got to finish it, put some oil. And it's like, no, the original was painted, and we're going to paint it. And it's like, well, let's...
But look at the craftsmanship on that.
Oh, they're doing the best job on all this stuff here.
Talk about woodwork.
Oh, man.
Just for transporting maybe sticks.
They sure have some amazing locomotives here.
They sure do.
And they're not all small. Look at this beast.
That's huge.
But I think one of my favorite engines here is this one. It's originally off the Denver South Park and Pacific, and this would have been up there at the Roundhouse in Como
Wow.
when we were up at the Roundhouse in Como. So this engine was actually serviced up there. It ended up on the Colorado and Southern, as this equipment is off the Colorado and Southern, which is very appropriate because we're practically on the Colorado and Southern grade here. It sure does my heart good to see this monument here in the museum.
Oh, it does.
It was built in Glenwood Canyon, ostensibly on the place where the Vista Dome was conceived. One of the directors of the Union Pacific was riding the Rio Grande up through Glenwood and saying, what a shame we can't see up into the cliffs and mountains here, and started sketching ideas for a dome car. And so later on, when the Rio Grande was running the California Zephyr, they built this monument on that site, saying it was here that the concept of the dome car was created. And it has this really neat California Zephyr dome car on the top of the monument.
Wow.
But then later on, they became terrified that somebody was going to steal this beautiful 1/8 scale model.
No kidding.
So they took it off and they brought it here to the museum. And then the monument didn't have a car on the top of it. And the first time I saw it, it's like, well, why did they take the car off? I want to see the car, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, somebody would steal it. And it's like, well, yeah, somebody did, and they took it to Golden. Anyway, then when they built the freeway through Glenwood Canyon, the whole monument had to be torn down. So they brought it here to the museum as well. And now it's all back in one piece. It's just not in Glenwood Canyon anymore. But it's a monument to the idea of the Vista Dome car.
Nice.
And one shouldn't overlook the fact that this is also just one beautiful model.
Right.
It's just really well done. And here we have the railroad of the Denver Garden Railway Society. Garden Railroad right here in the middle of the museum.
Oh my, look at that.
And I wish somebody would have been here running it, but that's what we get for showing up on an off day. There's nobody here. But they gave us a chance to really get up close and personal with the Garden Railroad, just not see anything running. So they're running predominantly 120.3 scale, but they can run anything on here that'll run on a number 1 gauge track. And boy, do they have a lot of number 1 gauge track. This thing winds all over the place. And it's a real hit with the locals. But they've got some really neat structures here, and they're able to withstand the elements here.
Yes, good and stout.
Really important with weather like this. And look at this elevated benchwork.
Isn't that wonderful?
You know, originally I thought garden railroads should all be built at ground level, but with my knees and my back, at Garage Mahal, that's what we're going to do. This is their railroad that they actually operate. There's a ring railroad that goes all the way around the outside that they can run their operating steam engines on, and they can actually water them from a water tank.
Oh, wow.
Richardson built that way back in the day, and they still have just this enormous collection of narrow gauge equipment. Another consolidation here, a 318, doesn't run, but what a beautiful, beautiful engine. But narrow gauge equipment from all of the big Colorado railroads.
Look at these Cabooses?
Cabooses.
Yeah, this one's kind of a long one.
Yeah.
Is that a bobber?
That is a bobber. There are very few bobbers. They've all had to be backdated because the original bobbers were all converted into just short cabooses and given wheel trucks. But the original Rio Grande bobber cabooses just had 2 axles, 4 wheels. And so this one's been backdated to its original 4-wheel configuration. Isn't that cool?
That is neat.
I'm sure there must be some instability here, or they probably would not have converted these to run on wheel trucks. But it's got this really interesting equalization system here, and then just 1 axle at either end. And a lot of the early cabooses and even freight cars back in the day were just little 2-axle 4-wheel jobs like that.
Wow. Oh, check out the inside of this one. This is my dream, including a pot-bellied stove.
You know, you could live in here.
That's always what I wanted to do. From the time I was a little girl, I wanted to live inside of a caboose.
I've seen people do that.
Yes, they do.
And you can, we ran into that one that somebody built on the Cumbers Toltec just as their RV.
Right.
And they custom built a caboose, and it's
Right.
just inside, it's a motorhome.
Well, and don't forget that place in Marysville that is the Caboose Village. You can stay in a caboose.
That's right. And they function just as motel rooms.
Right.
Except there's cabooses.
They're just fun.
Or cabooses.
Yeah.
Oh, look, it has a lantern box.
It
These really
does.
old ones only had 1 lantern, and they just stick it up inside the box above the cupola.
Oh, and a
And
lantern holder.
The lantern holder. This one doesn't have a lantern in it.
There
and
it does.
This one does, so that you can see exactly how those function. And look at the ornate doorknob.
I know, they're just so neat.
It's just an amazing little car. I
Just like a
love
little-
this car.
Little house.
I think we need to model this for the railroad in 120.3.
Oh, we do.
This is unusual. As I understand it, this is the last surviving Denver and Rio Grande Western steam locomotive in standard gauge.
Oh, my.
All these narrow gauge locomotives, but only one standard gauge locomotive, and there it is right there, number 683. Oh, and speaking of the California Zephyr, here's a set of locomotives that ran on both the California Zephyr and then later on the Rio Grande Zephyr, 5771. And I've actually ridden in this locomotive.
Oh my.
Back when it was pulling the Rio Grande Zephyr, I got a chance to go for a ride up in here as it went through the Y in Salt Lake City.
Oh, neat.
You know, that's what you can do when you know the locomotive engineer. But there's some just really, really neat stuff, and we've just sort of scratched the surface here on all of the really cool equipment that they've got here at the museum. And this way we actually get to see it because there's nobody else here.
That's right.
Just us. It's just really fun to see all this stuff, and for the first time we've actually gotten to really get up close and personal. Usually these passenger cars are running
Right.
full of people, so
Oh.
this way we get to play and go up inside them and just really get up close and personal with all of this equipment without fighting any crowds. So it was a good idea to just show up on an off day this way.
It was.
And this is the Railroad Club in the basement of the main building, the Denver Model Railroad Club, which will be next week's show.
Oh boy.
That is such a fun museum.
That is neat. I love it there.
Every time we go there, it's just a bigger kick than the time before,
no
or at
kidding.
least as big a kick. It's just
Right.
great.
It's just fun.
It's just absolutely great. And for me, one of my favorite things there is the Zephyr
Yes.
monument. It's just
That's
so
so
neat to see it
cool.
all put back together.
Right.
After looking at it time and time and time again, missing its train car in Glenwood Canyon and
Oh.
going, oh, I wish the car were
It
up
was
on it, but I know it
back.
gets stolen.
Right.
Anyway, it's all
Now
back
it's safe.
together. It's in a safe place and it's beautiful.
And they're guarding it.
And they're guarded. It's all good.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't been over to the channel, do pop over to the channel. And if you're not a subscriber, it would be cool to subscribe.
Right.
Now, we've been putting some of these movies up on Facebook. We're sort of experimenting with them.
Yes.
So by subscribe, what we mean is follow. If you're on Facebook, subscribe is follow and notify, or no, let's see, subscribe is like, and schedule is follow.
Right.
Anyway, do all those things.
So, yeah.
You know what
It's
to do.
getting
You
confusing.
Just
yeah.
just do whatever you're watching it on. Do whatever it takes to follow our activities as we
Yes.
go along.
Right.
And if you are on YouTube, you can still use the infamous blue button, which
Right.
isn't over there on Facebook, but it is here on YouTube. So you ready for it? Zoink! The big blue button.
big blue
with the
button.
rocket ship right there. Makes you a subscriber. Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here again in a few days with another show.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.